People love to say it's too late. Too late to start, too late to learn, too late to change. That's nonsense. At 60, you're not done. You're just less stupid than you were at 30. And if you use that wisely, you can still outsmart most of the crowd because they never learn anything. You don't need youth to win. You need clarity. And clarity, unfortunately, is something people only earn after decades of mistakes. I know I made plenty. Let me tell you something about my partner Warren that most people don't understand. 99% of his net worth was accumulated after his 50th birthday. 98% came after 65. At 65, Warren was worth roughly $3 billion. Today, approaching 94, he's worth over $160 billion. That's not talent. That's not luck. That's compound interest. The patient accumulation of returns over decades. The snowball doesn't get big at the top of the hill. It gets big at the bottom after rolling for a very long time. So if you're 60 and thinking your best years are behind you, you're operating with the wrong mental model entirely. When you're young, you think time is infinite. You chase every shiny thing. When you're older, you finally see the cost of that stupidity in money, energy, and peace of mind. So here's my advice. If you're 60 or older, stop chasing what you should have done. Start optimizing for what still matters. At this stage, your greatest asset isn't ambition. It's the ability to say no. Say no to envy. No to complexity. No to hustles that promise the world and deliver headaches. Your goal isn't to double your net worth. It's to avoid losing it. The first rule of compounding is never interrupt it unnecessarily. You don't need more action. You need fewer dumb decisions. I think when we're young, saying yes is how we survive. We say yes to build something from nothing. Careers, connections, a place in the world. And I believe that hunger to say yes is what separates people who create opportunity from people who wait for it. But here's what nobody warns you about. The yes becomes automatic. You stop choosing it, it starts choosing you. Somewhere along the way, the muscle you built for seizing opportunity becomes a reflex for accepting obligation. You say yes to meetings that steal your morning. Yes to people who drain you, but somehow still feel entitled to your time. Yes to commitments you made when you were a different person, living a different life. The yes that built your life can become the yes that drains it, if you're not paying attention. Michael DeVita was 58, preparing to retire. He'd done everything right. When Bernie Madoff's scheme collapsed, Michael's retirement vanished overnight. He was forced to work 10 more years. Steve Hymoff lost $2 million to a cousin's recommendation. Eileen Kent's elderly parents lost 3/4 of everything they had. What do they have in common? They said yes without scrutiny. They said yes when verification was required. At 60 plus, every major financial decision requires the word no as your default position until the evidence overwhelms your skepticism. This isn't pessimism. This is protection. If you're over 60 and still saying yes to everything, you haven't learned much. By now, life should have taught you a simple truth. Every yes is a trade, and you're trading the one thing you can't replenish: time. When you're young, you think saying yes is how you grow. When you're older, you realize saying no is how you stay sane. I've spent a lifetime watching smart people ruin themselves because they couldn't stop chasing one more deal, one more dollar, one more thrill. They had more money than they could spend in 3 lifetimes, and still they wanted a little more. Greed doesn't age well. Let me tell you something. The greatest investment I ever made wasn't in stocks. It was in refusing things that wasted my time. No to shallow people. No to complicated businesses. No to debt-fueled dreams. No to anything that promises fast results. Because nothing real happens fast. If you look back at the dumbest things you've done, most of them began with, "It looked like a great opportunity." At this age, You don't need great opportunities. You need peace of mind. And peace of mind doesn't come from more. It comes from less. Fewer moving parts, fewer obligations, fewer idiots. If you're 60 and still keeping score with your neighbors, you're playing a fool's game. Envy is a tax on intelligence. And the older you get, the higher that tax becomes. The problem with envy is that it has no finish line. You get the house, someone else gets a bigger one. You buy the car, someone else buys two. You invest well, someone else gets luckier. And suddenly what you already have doesn't feel enough. Not because it isn't, but because you're looking sideways. You'd think age would fix that. It doesn't. I've met old men worth billions who were still miserable because someone else got invited to the better yacht party. That's the disease of modern life. Status addiction. You can't cure it with success. You can only cure it with perspective. Warren once observed something that most psychology textbooks completely ignore. It's not greed that drives the world, but envy. Think about that carefully. Greed has limits. Envy has none. After the dot-com returns of the late 1990s, envy rippled through institutional money management. The amount invested in venture capital increased tenfold. That later money was lost very quickly. Very few firms made most of the returns. Everyone else got mediocre to lousy. But envy drove them to chase anyway. By 60, you should have enough data on life to realize that most people don't even know what game they're playing. Half the people you envy are secretly broke, unhappy, or both. They don't have it figured out. They just look louder on the surface. You don't see the sleepless nights, the stupid risks, the broken families. All you see is the shiny surface. And the irony, the people you envy probably envy someone else. It's a pyramid of foolishness. Everyone climbing toward a happiness that doesn't exist. I once said, envy is a really stupid sin because it's the only one you can't have any fun at. Greed, lust, gluttony. At least they have moments of pleasure before the regret. But envy, it's pure misery from start to finish. So when you feel that sting of comparison, remind yourself you're comparing your inside to someone else's highlight reel. Nobody posts their bankruptcy, their loneliness, or their dumb investment losses. They only post the illusion of winning. And chasing illusions is how people lose their minds and their money. Here's what I've learned. At 60, the real luxury isn't wealth. It's not having to care what anyone thinks of your wealth. Peace of mind beats the best stock tip. Contentment is the ultimate compounding machine. If you can wake up, read, think clearly, and take a walk without worrying what someone else is doing, you're already richer than most billionaires. You won't find that in Forbes, but you'll feel it in your bones, because the day you stop competing with others is the day you start compounding your own happiness. And that, my friend, is a better return than any investment I've ever made. One of the cruelest tricks life plays on people after 60 is comfort. You've survived the storms. You've made your money. You've earned the right to relax. And that's exactly when you start decaying. Slowly, politely, without even noticing. Comfort looks harmless. It feels deserved. But it's the silent killer of curiosity, energy, and usefulness. The world doesn't stop moving just because you've decided to. And if you sit still long enough, the gap between you and reality widens until you can't recognize the landscape anymore. That's how people turn into fossils while they're still breathing. Colonel Sanders started franchising Kentucky Fried Chicken at 62 after his restaurant closed. He faced over 1,000 rejections. At 73, he sold the company for $2 million. Ray Kroc was selling milkshake machines at 52 when he discovered McDonald's. At 59, he bought out the brothers. Bernie Marcus was fired at 50. He co-founded Home Depot. Arianna Huffington launched the Huffington Post at 55 and sold it for $315 million. A Kauffman Foundation study found that people over 50 start businesses at twice the rate of those in their 20s. Experience compounds just like capital, but only if you keep adding to it. I've seen it happen. Smart men who once read, learned, and adapted suddenly retreat into nostalgia. They talk about the good old days as if wisdom expired the day they stopped chasing it. Let me tell you, the good old days weren't that good. You just survived them, that's all. There's no rule that says you must stop learning after 60. That's just a lazy excuse for people who've mistaken comfort for happiness. You want to stay sharp? Stay curious. Keep reading. Keep questioning. Keep doubting your own conclusions. The brain, like a muscle, atrophies when idle. If you stop challenging it, it will betray you. And once the mind goes soft, the rest follows. Judgment, discipline, even decency. I've spent my life reading, not because it made me rich, but because it kept me alive mentally. Reading is the ultimate form of self-defense against stupidity, including your own. Most people at 60 think they've seen it all. No, they've just stopped paying attention. The world will always surprise you if you're humble enough to admit you don't understand it yet. A sharp old mind is rarer and more valuable than any startup or new gadget. You don't need to keep up with the world. You just need to understand it. That's enough to stay ahead of 90% of the population. Remember this. The minute you stop learning, you start dying. It just takes a little longer for the body to notice. If you're over 60 and still think money will fix your problems, you've misunderstood both money and problems. Money is a tool, not a scoreboard, not a therapy session, and certainly not a purpose. I've known rich people who were miserable at 40 and even more miserable at 70. Why? Because they kept confusing wealth with worth. Money can buy you comfort, it can buy you options, but it can't buy you wisdom, self-respect, or good sleep. Like Warren, I had a considerable passion to get rich, not because I wanted Ferraris. I wanted independence. I desperately wanted it. That distinction matters enormously. If you pursue wealth for independence, when you have enough, if you pursue wealth for wealth's sake, no amount will ever satisfy. If all you succeed in doing in life is getting rich by buying little pieces of paper, it's a failed life. Life is more than being shrewd in wealth accumulation. By 60, you probably figured out that the hardest problems in life, love, purpose, health, family, don't respond to cash offers. If money alone could make people happy, Silicon Valley would be full of saints. Instead, it's full of anxious millionaires chasing immortality and dopamine. I never met a man who got happier after doubling his net worth past a certain point. But I've met plenty who got quieter because they finally realized the chase wasn't worth the noise. The real use of money after 60 is freedom. Freedom from nonsense. Freedom to choose who you deal with, what you tolerate, and how you spend your hours. At this age, time is your scarcest asset. If you're wasting it on things you dislike, you're not wealthy. You're trapped with better furniture. A simple rule: if it doesn't improve your peace of mind, it's not worth the price tag. By 60, the compounding you should care most about isn't in your portfolio. It's in your body. People love to talk about compound interest like it's a secret formula. It is, but it applies to everything, not just money. Eat like a fool for 30 years and you'll compound disease. Think like a fool for 30 years and you'll compound regret. The math never lies. Morgan Housel calculated something fascinating. If Warren had achieved the same 22% annual returns, but started at 30 instead of 11, and stopped at 60 like a normal person, his net worth would be approximately $12 million, 99.9% less than his actual fortune. The difference isn't skill. The difference is time. And time requires health. Jim Simons achieved 66% annual returns, triple Warren's rate, but he's 72% less wealthy. Why? Fewer years of compounding. Good investing isn't about earning the highest returns. It's about earning pretty good returns that you can stick with for the longest period of time. If you made it this far, your biggest risk isn't the bear market. It's neglect. Neglecting your sleep, neglecting your movement, neglecting your curiosity. I've watched sharp minds dull simply because they stopped taking care of the machine that carried them. People will research a stock for weeks, but won't spend 1 hour understanding their own health metrics. That's stupidity, plain and simple. What good is $1 million if you spend every day in a waiting room? By 60, your focus should shift from getting richer to staying functional. Energy, not money, becomes your real currency. Longevity isn't a reward for good genes. It's interest earned on a lifetime of discipline. You can't buy discipline and you can't outsource it. You either practice it daily or lose it slowly. I've always believed your mind and body are a joint venture. If one collapses, the other soon follows. That's why I walked, read, thought, and worked even in my 90s. Not because I was chasing longevity, but because motion kept the rust away. Don't try to live forever. Just don't decay early out of stupidity. People think aging is decline. It's not. It's exposure. It reveals the true consequences of how you've lived. And if you've lived with discipline, the later years can be the best compounders. Calmer, wiser, more efficient. So don't aim to feel young. Aim to stay useful. There's a difference. Youth is temporary. Usefulness, if maintained, can outlive you. By 60, you should have learned the art of sitting still, not laziness, stillness. There's a difference. Laziness avoids effort. Stillness avoids stupidity. When you're young, movement feels like progress. You rush from one project to another, convinced that activity equals achievement. Eventually, you discover it mostly equals exhaustion. If you took our top 15 decisions out of Berkshire Hathaway's history, we'd have a pretty average record. It wasn't hyperactivity, but a hell of a lot of patience. You stuck to your principles, and when opportunities came along, you pounced on them with vigor. Here's a calculation most people miss. If you buy something which compounds for 30 years at 15% per annum and pay 135% tax at the very end, you keep 13.3% per annum after taxes. But if you had to pay taxes every year, your return drops to 9.75%. That 3.5% difference over 30 years is truly eye-opening. Patience isn't just a virtue. It's a tax optimization strategy. I learned early that most people lose money not because they're dumb, but because they can't sit quietly while compounding works its silent magic. The same applies to life. People ruin good marriages, friendships, even health because they can't resist tinkering with things that don't need fixing. Stillness is a superpower. It keeps you from reacting to nonsense. It allows wisdom to surface while others drown in noise. I used to call it inactivity backed by knowledge, doing nothing but doing it intelligently. Most of the world, especially in finance, hates silence. They confuse noise for insight and busyness for value. It's a disease, and it spreads easily. When you're older, you can't afford that disease. Your energy is finite. You must spend it where the return justifies the cost. I've met men who can't spend one evening alone with their thoughts. They need constant distraction, screens, gossip, markets, politics. They fear silence because silence forces reflection. And reflection can be brutal if you've built your life on illusions. But if you can sit with yourself honestly, unflinchingly, you start seeing what really matters. Stillness doesn't mean withdrawal from the world. It means detachment from stupidity. It's the ability to look at chaos and say, "Not my problem." I promise you, that's one of the most profitable sentences in life. When markets panic, I sit. When people gossip, I listen, rarely respond. When emotions flare, I wait. Patience is more powerful than intelligence because it protects you from yourself. You don't need to be the smartest person in the room, just the calmest. There's an old saying I like, Never interrupt your enemy while he's making a mistake. Well, in markets and in life, most of your enemies are invisible. They're not people. They're impulses, greed, fear, impatience. Let them destroy others while you sit quietly, and let time reward restraint. If you can practice stillness daily, in your thoughts, your reactions, your investments, you'll be shocked how much progress happens while you appear inactive. The world is full of people who can't stop moving. Let them. They're the reason compounding still works for the rest of us. At 60, the quality of your life is determined less by what you own and more by whom you tolerate. People are leverage. The right ones multiply your peace. The wrong ones compound your misery. I've seen smart investors destroyed not by bad markets, but by bad company. Partners who couldn't be trusted. Relatives who confused generosity with weakness. Friends who only appeared when there was something to gain. I try to get rid of people who always confidently answer questions about which they don't have any real knowledge. This isn't cruelty. It's curation. The quality of your thinking depends on the quality of the people you think with. Warren says, hang out with people better than you. Find colleagues capable of giving constructive criticism and take it. By 60, you need people who will tell you when you're wrong, not people who defer to your experience. People who respect you enough to challenge you. If you're old enough to know better, but still surrounding yourself with fools, you're volunteering for suffering. The secret to aging well isn't vitamins. It's selectivity, choosing who gets your time, your energy, and your emotional bandwidth. When I was younger, I thought tolerance was a virtue. Now I think it's often a liability. The longer you live, the more allergic you should become to stupidity, drama, and deceit. Some people bring problems into every room. Others bring calm. At 60, you should know the difference and adjust accordingly. You don't owe anyone unlimited access to your peace. That includes family, especially family. Blood doesn't make someone rational. Shared DNA doesn't require shared chaos. If someone consistently drains you, distance is the only rational response. Not revenge, not argument, just quiet removal. The best partnerships I ever had were simple. High trust, low friction, mutual respect. If you need lawyers to define basic decency, you've already lost. And when you find a few good ones, keep them. Good friends compound just like capital. They appreciate quietly, pay dividends in laughter, and protect you in downturns. The tragedy is most people chase excitement over reliability. They choose fireworks over fireplaces, and then wonder why their lives are full of smoke. Prune ruthlessly, heap wisely, detach kindly. And remember, solitude is better than stupidity disguised as company. If you're 60 and you have 3 people you can trust without hesitation, you're doing better than 99% of humanity. You don't need crowds anymore. You need clarity, loyalty, and quiet dinners with people who've earned their chair at your table. By 60, you've collected more years than you have left. That's not pessimism. It's arithmetic. And if that statement makes you uncomfortable, you still haven't made peace with reality. People spend half their lives pretending time is infinite and the other half pretending it isn't running out. Both are forms of denial. The clock doesn't care about your regrets, ambitions, or portfolio. It just ticks quietly, indifferently, honestly. Though the only rational thing to do is face it. Financial planners divide retirement into 3 seasons. The go-go years, roughly 60 to 70. You're healthy enough for adventures, sharp enough for new projects. The slow-go years, 70 to 80, energy fades. Adventures become closer to home. The no-go years, 80 plus, travel becomes genuinely difficult. Most people assume the future is a linear extension of the present. It isn't. The window for certain experiences is open widest right now. The trip you're postponing, your knees might not allow it at 75. Making peace with time means using your go-go years for go-go activities instead of perpetually waiting for conditions that may never arrive. I've never understood people who try to outrun aging. They diet, inject, stretch, and deceive themselves as if fooling the mirror somehow fools mortality. It's absurd. You can't negotiate with time, but you can cooperate with it. That means accepting trade-offs: slower body, sharper mind, fewer years, more clarity, less noise, more signal. If you're wise, you'll see that aging isn't loss. It's editing. Life removes things you don't need so you can finally focus on what matters. The tragedy is that most people fight the edit. They cling to youth like hoarders clinging to junk, and they miss the gift of simplicity waiting underneath it all. At 60, you don't need to chase immortality. You just need to stop accelerating decay. Stop fighting battles that don't matter. Stop pretending you can buy more time with busyness. Stop mistaking distraction for vitality. The older you get, the more you realize peace isn't found. It's cleared. Cleared of noise, ego, and false urgency. That's the real compounding of old age. The quiet stacking of good days spent wisely without pretense. Time isn't your enemy. It's your final teacher. It strips away illusions one by one until you're left with truth. And if you've lived rationally, truth is a friend. I've buried friends, colleagues, even idols. Each one taught me a version of the same lesson. You don't get to decide how long you live. You only decide how honestly you use the time you have. If you've made it past 60, you've already beaten most of the odds. The question now isn't how to add more years. It's how to multiply meaning. This is the stage where compounding turns inward. No longer about money, not even about achievements, but about the kind of person time has shaped you into. You spent decades collecting knowledge. The final test is whether you can distill it into wisdom. Knowledge talks, wisdom listens. Knowledge argues, wisdom observes. The difference is humility, the realization that in the end you control very little besides your own behavior. Let me be direct. I've made errors that cost me significant wealth. Early in my career, I sold investments too soon because I lost patience. This impatience probably cost me half of what I could have accumulated. Half. There's no way you can live an adequate life without many mistakes. The trick is learning to handle them. The worst lies are the lies we tell ourselves. I've learned to force myself to consider opposing arguments, especially when they challenge my best-loved ideas. I'm not entitled to have an opinion unless I can state the arguments against my position better than the people in opposition. By 60, you should have developed the same standard. That's why the smartest people I've known became quieter with age. Not defeated, refined. They no longer needed to prove they were right because they finally understood that most of life isn't a debate. It's a filtering process. What remains at the end is what truly matters. Your integrity, your discipline, your peace. Those are the ultimate compounders. Money can vanish, but character endures, especially when nobody's watching. And the beautiful part, character compounds silently, just like interest. Every time you choose restraint over impulse, patience over panic, honesty over convenience, you're earning invisible dividends that pay out in peace. When you're young, the world teaches you how to win. When you're old, you finally learn how to lose gracefully. You lose speed, ego, illusions, and sometimes people. But in that subtraction, you gain something rarer, clarity. Clarity that all the frantic running, chasing, proving, and arguing was mostly noise. Clarity that most of what you feared never mattered. And clarity that peace isn't a reward at the end. It's a skill you could have practiced all along. If you're over 60, practice it now. Sit with your thoughts. Keep reading. Keep learning, not because you need more facts, but because curiosity is how the soul stays young. Spend your time with people who make you think, not people who make you tired. Protect your energy the way you once protected your capital. And when the younger ones ask for advice, don't preach. Just show them what calm looks like. You will teach more through stillness than through sermons. I've said it before. Take all the wisdom you've gathered over a lifetime, boil it down to the essence, and it comes to this. Avoid stupidity. Keep learning. Stay rational. And enjoy the quiet. That's the closest thing to a formula for a good life I've ever found. In the end, nobody remembers your net worth. They remember your temperament, your decency, the calm you brought to a noisy world. And if you can reach your final years without bitterness, without envy, and without regret, then you didn't just live long. You lived well. Most people don't need another project, another startup, another purpose. You need presence, a clear mind, a calm heart, and the ability to sit in silence without feeling like you're missing out. Because that's when you finally realize you're not running out of time. You're just running out of illusions. And that's not a tragedy, that's freedom.